Do you plan to go back with Leah to Romania?
Love to. And she used to want to go. Right now, she's...
Is she curious? Does she ask, does she have an interest in learning who her birth mother is, or any relatives? And what do you say to, how do you deal with that?
Well, you know, we've talked about that forever, and she knows adopted families because she goes on progress reports with me when we see kids who have been back from their country. So this has always been a part of her life. When she was 3, she asked if we could go find her birth mother and marry her so we could take care of her. She felt so bad for her. We've always celebrated a gotcha day in adoption and talked about her birth mother and birth family and the circumstances that they were probably in at that point, why they had to make the decisions that they did. And we always planned to go back. We just haven't been able to really because of finances, but she wants to go back and find them someday and just learn about them. I mean, she's a vital part in this child's life, and we embrace that family too. We don't know what it'll be like or if she'll be able to find her, but she'd like to look for her someday.
Now, are all the children who are adopted internationally orphans, or how does that work? Because I know there's been many cases involving kidnapping where they kidnap the children from their families to be put up for adoption. So what are the laws on poor families giving children up for adoption, or how does that work?
That is an area that The Hague has also looked into very carefully. They want to make sure that there has been no incentive for families to give up their children for adoption. They want to make sure that there has not been any money under the table. So we are very happy that The Hague is in effect because we know that these children are legal orphans. In each country, when a person abandons their child, you know, usually they have some type of a search process or a waiting process to see if somebody comes back to claim them. That is one of the reasons that people tend to want to adopt internationally, is because they know that these children were not claimed. These are orphan children that do not have relatives or somebody else to claim them, and they have been given that gap of time, and they have passed that gap that nobody did come back. So families do have a peace of mind that, you know, they're not going to be visited by someone who someday says, you know, that this is my child.
Okay, I know that adoption here in the States can be a very lengthy process. How long would you say on average does an adoption take place before the family can actually have the baby in their arms?
That depends on, each country is different. Each court system of each country is different. There's a paperwork process that they need to do here. There is an INS process that they need to go through here. If the family is very narrow in the age of the child that they are requesting, if a family says female only or they're open to male or female, if that family is open to minor correctable special needs or healthy only, there are many different components. If the family is very open to the ethnic background of their child, that also makes a difference. So there is a huge range in that answer. I'm just giving you some of the variances or some of the some of the components that explain the change in time requirement.
Okay. Are international adoptions more expensive than domestic adoptions, or are they similar?
In domestic adoption and international adoption, there's a fee, but in international adoption, when you work with nonprofit agencies, one of the components, again, of The Hague is to provide full disclosure of fees. So families are given all the fees up front. They know what everything is approximately going to be close to, so they are not taken by surprise. They also know that in foreign countries, they will not be charged a fee before they can leave that country, or no unexpected fees are going to be charged to them that they did not anticipate. Domestic adoption also has fees as well. So adoption is expensive. No one said it wasn't, but, people are told in advance and then they make that decision for themselves.
And domestic adoption, you're talking about private through an attorney, and a parent gives up their child, as opposed to adopting through the foster care system, which is an entirely different program. Because if you adopt through the foster care system, you're going to be reimbursed for any fees that you that you put out.
Although domestic adoption does charge as well. So I also worked in domestic adoption, so I'm aware of that. So families have to be aware of, all the information up front to know what they're getting into and make the choice that works for them.
Now this question's for both of you. What would you say to critics who oppose international adoption and say our first priority should be the thousands of orphans that we have here in our own country?
I would tell people that domestic adoption, if it's the right choice for them and their family, go to it with our blessings. There are many beautiful, wonderful children in the United States that do need homes. International adoption is just another option to build your family. And oftentimes people want to adopt from a certain country, they have a passion for that country, or it is the same ethnic background that they are. So that is another reason that they might be having a preference to go abroad. But whatever works for each family is their individual decision.
Yeah, it's really a personal decision that you have to make based on who you are, the kind of life that you've led, the kind of life that you lead. Sometimes adoptions happen with interracial couples, and I've done a lot of families where one, either husband or wife maybe is Chinese or Japanese, and they wanted to adopt from an Asian country. There's so many differences and variables and the different forms of adoption that really families have to take a look at all of the different kinds of adoption and make the best decision for themselves. A lot of the people that I've done home studies for, and I know that, are very worldly people. They've traveled a lot. They're very expansive in what they've done in life, and they really feel not just a part of the United States, but really a part of the world. And they really feel that it's important to reach out to some of the orphans who maybe have not as many resources as kids in this country do. It's a different way of maybe looking at the situation, but it's a very personal decision.
And it's a very humanitarian one as well, because children in other countries who live in orphanages do not have, as Luisa just stated, other countries don't always have a free education. There are gender inequality issues across the world. So children in poverty have a very different life in orphanages in foreign countries than they might have in the United States. It's just a different option.
If you could offer one piece of advice to a family looking to adopt internationally, what would you say to them?
I would tell them to do their research, contact an agency who has been in existence for quite a while, someone who's Hague accredited, someone who has a good professional reputation. Word of mouth matters. Talk to people who've also adopted. Hear some positive things about your agency, ask around, ask questions. We are also part of the Joint Council on International Children's Services, which is a network of international agencies. So we're able to learn about other agencies, and we tell families even who come to us, think about the decision carefully. Do not make an emotional decision, make a logical one. Decide what works for you and your family. Not just you and your husband, but maybe other children in your home and your extended family, and make the right decision for you and your family.
And I'd say talk to other families too. Talk to other families who've adopted and get to know their experiences and what they've done and the agencies that they've gone with and what their experiences with that agency has been. But understand also with international adoption that you're not just adopting a child, you're adopting a culture. If you adopt a child from China, you're adopting China as a part of your culture, of your family. Romania is a part of the culture of our family now. So to understand that it's not just a body that you're adopting, it's a whole human being with a culture and a heritage and everything that's coming into your family that you want to embrace.
You're making a multicultural family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you again for joining our show. You're watching On Point. I'm Sara Van Horne. Mausami, I know your adoption agency does more than just international adoptions. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. One of our main priorities is not just adopting children out of a country, but improving the lives of children who are still there. There are oftentimes children with special needs that do not get adopted, and I mean special needs, mental, emotional, physical. They don't get adopted, and we want to improve their life as well.